That the way forward in Ukraine is not to continue to give them a bucket load of money and let them waste it all and just fire missiles at the Russians to no avail because the Russians have taken 20% of their land. The smart thing to do is to try and find some kind of peace.
Have you both with us this morning, political commentators, both, and Peter's a political strategist as well. Tell us, Theo, how important Keir Starmer is at the moment in all these discussions in regard to Ukraine, do you think?
We spoke a lot about Keir Starmer and his coalition of the willing. It looks as though the coalition of the willing has now gone down the gurgler because Donald Trump's just gone, well, I don't know what you people are talking about. We're not doing that. You've even admitted.
Really adamant that they would be prepared to put peacekeepers on the ground in Ukraine should it be deemed necessary. But of course they want that backstop, that security backstop from the United States. But in the wider picture of where we find ourselves right now, the Prime Minister's statement says it all. The ball is in Putin's court.
Parliament bypassed, military deployed, no public vote. In just one diplomatic visit to Paris, Keir Starmer has potentially committed British forces to Ukraine, while carefully avoiding promises that our elected representatives will have any meaningful say in the matter. The timing couldn't be more alarming. As Starmer speaks of operationalizing peace deals that don't even exist yet, Russian missiles are reportedly striking Ukrainian energy infrastructure, with both sides accusing each other of breaking agreements. This isn't preparing for peace. It's preparing for British involvement in Europe's bloodiest conflict since World War II without democratic consent. What if British troops were deployed to a war zone without Parliament's approval? This isn't a hypothetical scenario anymore. It's unfolding right before our eyes. The UK's constitutional tradition has long held that while the Prime Minister technically possesses the royal prerogative to deploy armed forces, parliamentary consent has become the expected democratic norm for major military operations. This convention, strengthened after the Iraq War, represents a crucial check on executive power when British lives are at stake. But Keir Starmer has just driven a truck through this democratic safeguard. His carefully crafted statement in Paris last week revealed his true intentions. Listen to his exact wording. MPs would be granted a vote before any long-term deployment to Ukraine. Did you catch that qualifier? Long-term. This single phrase creates a dangerous loophole that potentially allows Starmer to dispatch British forces into Europe's bloodiest conflict since World War II without proper democratic oversight. This isn't some accidental slip of the tongue. The Prime Minister's statement came only after mounting pressure from opposition leaders who were demanding parliamentary authorization for any potential military action. Rather than commit to full democratic scrutiny, Starmer opted for linguistic gymnastics, creating a pathway where short-term...
That you can't do anything without America, so why don't you do something with America?
Quite what that collection of beanbag politicians from Europe thought they would achieve by getting together on Sunday is beyond me.
They all fancied a trip to London, I suspect.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Yeah.
Come to the table and negotiate with primarily Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. So, yes, Keir Starmer is trying to cement his position amongst European leaders.
But anybody with any semblance of grey matter between their ears knows that this matter will only be resolved with some input from America.
Exactly.
But the real negotiations, the ones that really matter, are between Donald Trump, his team in the US administration, and of course Moscow and Putin's team representing Russian interests.
Or emergency deployments could happen without MPs having any say whatsoever. The implications are staggering. Under this framework, British troops could be inserted into an active conflict zone through a unilateral decision from Downing Street. No debate, no vote, no accountability, all while technically allowing Starmer to claim he never broke his promise about long-term deployments. It's political maneuvering at its most cynical, with potential life or death consequences. More concerning still is Starmer's announcement that British military chiefs would be heading to Ukraine alongside their French and German counterparts. This isn't merely a diplomatic gesture. It represents a significant escalation of UK involvement at a time when the conflict shows no sign signs of de-escalation. The move signals Britain's deeper integration into the military planning aspects of the Ukraine conflict, potentially putting us on a slippery slope toward more direct intervention. There's a glaring paradox in the timing here. Starmer speaks of operationalizing some nebulous peace deal, a peace deal that simply doesn't exist. Active hostilities continue along the front lines. Ceasefire violations are reported daily. The conditions on the ground directly contradict the diplomatic language being used to justify these military preparations. This disconnect between reality and rhetoric should set alarm bells ringing for anyone concerned with transparent governance. What we're witnessing...
grandstanding.
Yeah.
And
virtue signalling.
Of course,
yeah.
of which so many of those European politicians got PhDs in virtue signalling.
Well, I said yesterday,
Starmer is positioning himself amongst European leaders, but in reality, what is he actually achieving? This coalition of the willing, it doesn't seem to be having a lot of willing people. You know, a lot of these nations...
Well, quite a few members of it.
There's a few members, but what are they actually going to contribute?
3 weeks ago, they'd never heard of a peace deal for Ukraine. Suddenly now they want one.
Yeah, exactly.
3 weeks ago.
Let's rewind a couple of months before Donald Trump had taken office for the second time. Nobody was speaking.
But they don't know what they'd be contributing for yet. We don't know about peacekeeping troops yet or not.
We're all still very vague on the details when everyone seems to be making the right noises, but with only France and ourselves willing to put boots on the ground, openly stating that.
Is a fundamental shift in Britain's sovereign decision-making process on matters of war and peace. Parliamentary oversight, a cornerstone of our democracy, is being systematically undermined through careful wording and diplomatic sleight of hand. The precedent being established here extends far beyond Ukraine. It potentially reshapes how all future military deployments could be handled. Traditionally, major commitments of British forces have been subject to parliamentary approval. The 2003 Iraq war vote, while controversial in its outcome, at least followed the proper democratic process. The 2013 Syria vote, where Parliament rejected military action, demonstrated the vital importance of this check on executive power. Even the 2018 airstrikes in Syria, conducted without prior parliamentary approval, sparked significant controversy and calls for stronger oversight. Starmer's approach threatens to normalize bypassing Parliament entirely. By creating arbitrary distinctions between long-term and other deployments, he establishes a framework where significant military decisions can be made in the shadows, away from public scrutiny. This isn't just about Ukraine policy, it's about the erosion of democratic principles that should govern...
Of peace.
No
one, not a soul, not a politician,
not a sausage,
anywhere.
Bugger all, you might say.
Yeah. So Donald Trump has seized the initiative, has led, then so many people have got their knickers in a twist.
Kick in the teeth for Starmer in terms of his actual ability to deliver on something. But I will say he's played this pretty well from a kind of PR perspective, and I think he's looking like he's important, but let's be real, Donald Trump will just ignore him if necessary. He's somewhat of an irrelevancy.
Over three geezers having a fallout in a room.
Oh yeah, because he's a bit rude.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Do me a favour.
Think of some of the meetings.
Some of these people have never been in meetings where you shout at each other.
Exactly.
Right?
Where you have differences of opinion and robust exchanging of views.
To the grander scheme and the grander negotiations that are happening. I mean, one thing I do find very interesting is the rise of Saudi Arabia and how they have become the country to which these negotiations are happening. I think that's a really important aspect.
How Britain commits its armed forces. The silence from many quarters on this issue is deafening. Where are the voices that once demanded parliamentary sovereignty? The same politicians who argued for democratic oversight during previous conflicts seem strangely quiet when it comes to Starmer's maneuvers. This selective application of democratic principles based on political allegiance represents a disturbing trend in British politics. Let's be absolutely clear about what's happening here. Starmer's maneuvering isn't merely poor judgment, it's a calculated gamble with British lives. Military experts and analysts are already sounding the alarm, calling these plans premature and reckless, given Ukraine's volatile conditions. What's particularly disturbing is the convenient absence of guaranteed parliamentary scrutiny before deployment. This isn't just about Ukraine policy anymore, it's about whether we'll allow our democratic safeguards to be dismantled through clever wordplay and diplomatic sleight of hand. The question facing Britain now is stark. Will we demand proper oversight before our troops enter Europe's deadliest conflict zone, or will we accept Starmer's dangerous new precedent of executive war powers?